My name is Raquel Black. I am the co-working manager for Chains Labs. I am Kia'ani, born for Senjakinit. I am a member of the Navajo Nation, and thank you for being here with us today. First off, I'd like to give a brief introduction on Chains Labs for those who aren't already familiar with who we are. Officially, Chains Labs is a Native-led and Native-controlled nonprofit organization based on the Navajo and Hopi nations. Here at Chains Labs, our goal and mission is to provide creative workspace, tools, resources, and knowledge for Native entrepreneurs. And for those of you who are near Tubu City or in Tubu City, you may have been aware of our co-working studio over at the Moenkopi Legacy Inn campus for the past few years. It's currently not open, but the construction on our new headquarters is currently underway, and it'll be located right next to the chapter house on Main Street between the chapter and the police station there. So starting as early as this winter, we'll have a brand new co-working space for everyone. And some of the services that we'll be able to provide and offer to our local entrepreneurs are some tools that could be useful to your business, such as desk-based Wi-Fi access, color printing, in-person coaching sessions, and more. We plan to also bring back our monthly in-person trainings for those who are interested, and our list of co-working services are constantly being updated and growing. So as far as how we're planning to support our entrepreneurs and our local small business owners, there at the headquarters, we're always open to new ideas or how we can better service our local communities. We're really excited to bring this community space for everyone to help with building and growing your business. So please stay tuned for more information as our construction gets closer to completion. One of our most popular questions that we get here at Chains Labs is, how do I start a business? All of our programs and services here, including the co-working space, are designed to help our Native entrepreneurs, our artisans, change makers, and vendors alike to both start up, strengthen, and grow their businesses. So if this is the question that you have, my next few slides are for you. One program we have available is the Business Incubator program. It's one of the only Native-led business incubators for Native entrepreneurs in the United States, and we're right here in Northern Arizona. This program is being led by our Director of Business Incubation, Jessica Stego here. She's right there on the far right. And it is a 12-month program for Native entrepreneurs who want support and training on how to start and operate your business on the Navajo and Hopi nations. Chains Labs will be accepting applications for the next round of entrepreneurs who want to participate in this program later this year. So if you're interested and would like assistance with your logo, your website design, your bookkeeping, your finances, please check out our website here at nativestartup.org/incubator. And then another question that we get often is, how do I get help running my business? There are so many aspects to being an entrepreneur, especially on the Navajo and Hopi nations, and the answer or solution that you're searching for is not always obvious. So here at Chains Labs, one of our driving factors is kinship, building relationships among our communities and our community members and our nations. And how Chains Labs can help there is through our business coaching appointments. We offer free virtual 90-minute appointments with any of our business coaches. Our coaches are available on Mondays from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. and they each have their own area of expertise depending on the kind of support you're looking for. We have a team of very bright and very eager coaches, such as Jessica Stego, the director of our incubator program, Christine Laughter, the director of our kinship lending program. We have Marsha Gray Eyes, our finance director, and then a few more of our coaches are Cecilia So, Tim Deal, and Joe Elliott Nez. And we actually have several of them online with us right now. But hi, Tim, Marsha, and then Heather herself. They are each incredibly knowledgeable in their specialties, and will be able to assist you while you're with what you're needing and where you're needing help with your businesses. They're able to assist you with areas from marketing to accounting, or your bookkeeping systems, or if you're just starting out, they can assist you with creating a business model and then navigating the Navajo Nation systems for things such as your business site lease, and then registering with the Navajo Nation Business Regulatory. You can find more information here on our website at nativestartup.org/events. And you can also book your appointment on there with any of our coaches as well. Another question that we get is, how do I create a website? Until Change Labs can go back to hosting open studio hours at our new headquarters, we will refer you to our YouTube channel. We currently have over 40 videos covering 40 recorded sessions and discussions, each designed for Native business owners and all led by Native entrepreneurs and creatives. Our workshops have covered topics like social media marketing, website design, doing business on the Navajo Nation, and many more. It's a growing archive of shared knowledge from other Natives who really want to see our Native people thrive and their businesses grow. To access any of our past sessions and our listings of resources, such as grants and other informational events, I'll refer you to our link here, nativestartup.org/resources. And we update this page pretty regularly, so be sure to check in every now and then for other information that's uploaded on there. Another great resource we have to offer are our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And I do recommend that you check out those pages as well for our regular postings. And we do like to share and promote events and information from many of our other partners and others in our network. So I do recommend that you check that as well. And then lastly, there's a whole spectrum of who we consider Native entrepreneurs. And we here at Change Labs have been curating a list of them. If you're in the market for finding Native service providers who can help you with your business, we currently have over 600 Native-owned businesses listed in here. And they're all really great businesses that we really consider great resources to helping you start and run your business. Or maybe you're searching for Native-made products, such as scarves, necklaces, jewelry. So visit the site here at resrising.org. And if you are a Native business owner yourself, feel free to list yourself on there. It's free and it's a very simple process to apply. So if you have any questions about Change Labs at all, or if you're interested in any of our services, feel free to let me know. I can direct you to where we can start getting you involved with it. And then my email is here at the bottom or in the middle, Raquel@nativestartup.org. All right. And now before we get started, I want to touch base on our workshop etiquette and how we can be respectful of our guest time today. We do ask that you stay on mute during the presentation unless you're called upon by Heather. But do feel free to populate the chat box with any questions or comments that you have, and we'll make sure to get to them before we end the session today. And then also a reminder, the session is being recorded today and will be available on our YouTube channel later this week. And now finally, the person of the hour, Heather Fleming. She's our Change Lab executive director here and an award-winning designer with nearly 20 years of experience with helping entrepreneurs, it's a tricky word, and organizations bring their ideas to life. So welcome, Heather, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Raquel. All right, let's do the screen share swap. I'm going to charge along, assuming that everybody can see my screen. So if you can't, just let me know. Hi, everybody. Yate. Ashe Heather Fleming inishia. Bitani nishle. Bilagana bashichin. Todachini dashiche. Bilagana dashanella. And I'm originally from Tuba City, but I'm joining you today from Denver, Colorado. And I'm really excited to go through this topic. When Raquel sent out an email to the team saying, hey, does anybody want to talk about idea validation? I think I was the first one to raise my hand. It's something that I'm really passionate about and something that I've helped a lot of other entrepreneurs do. And I'll show you what I mean by that. There's many different ways that you can test and validate your idea in the market. So what I'm going to show you, to me, is kind of like an inexpensive, fun way that also garners you a lot of insight from your prospective customers. So this is what we're going to do over the next, how long is this? Another 60 minutes or so that we have left. We're going to talk about why it's worth testing in the first place. And when I say test, I'm using that interchangeably with the word validate. How one does that, I'm going to introduce this idea of prototyping. And I'm going to show you kind of, if you go through that effort and take those steps, like what does it look like for you? What is the benefit as a change maker, as an entrepreneur, as a nonprofit leader? What resources do I know of that are available to you to do all this work? And I've only included free resources. And then we can leave some time for Q&A, but I'll be checking the chat box regularly. So if you have a question, just populate something in there or interrupt me. I really don't mind. I'm not somebody who gets stuck in my own presentations. I like to think that I'm pretty flexible. So we're going to start, though, with a quick poll. I want to see who's all in this room. So you're going to get a poll question coming at you right now. I'd love to know, if you've joined us today, what do you have an idea for? I'm assuming that if you came here today, that you're thinking about something or you're working on something. Is it a product, like a physical thing that you sell? It could be sushi rolls, it could be t-shirts. Is it a service, like I do home repair, or I cut hair, or I put in their Navajo wellness subscription? If somebody wants to start that, I will help them. I would love something like that. Or is it a nonprofit offering like we do here at Change Labs, offering workshops, offering support for entrepreneurs? And here I put the example of a seed saving training. Or is it something else? So I've had only 3 of you have participated so far, though there's so many Change Lab staff in this call that that might be everybody in the group. Okay, ending in 5, 4, 3, 2. Here's who's in the room today. We have, oh, awesome. We have some nonprofit ideas here. Great. We have, then we have service folks. That is very in line with our incubator program, actually. We get a lot of service ideas, and nonprofits tend to fall under service. But we also have somebody here who's working on a product, and then somebody who's cooking up something interesting, something else. Oh, sorry, I forgot to share those results with you. I'll leave that up for a little bit. Well, then let's move right along to why. Why is testing or validating your idea a good idea? And I've come up with a few reasons, but if you have reasons of your own, like what brought you here, I'd love to read those in the chat window. So again, feel free to answer this question for yourself. Why is testing or validating your idea a good one? But otherwise, I'm going to roll right through with some of the reasons that I came up with. First and foremost, the main reason that I can think of is money. Let's talk about money. Testing almost always saves you money. So if we use a t-shirt business as an example, let's say you have a design for a shirt, and getting t-shirts printed, as some of you would know, isn't that cheap. There's the cost of the shirts, and then there's the costs for the printing. And if your print has multiple colors and you're doing a screen print, there's a setup fee for each color, and you'll quickly burn through hundreds of dollars to make shirts without knowing whether or not anyone else actually likes that design, other than, say, your brother or your mom. Those are always the people that will automatically validate your ideas. So they're the worst test subjects. And you could easily test your design by simply printing it out on a piece of paper, showing it to friends, or making something less expensive like a sticker, or just buying a t-shirt from Walmart and then using a heat transfer sheet at home to make a handful of those shirts yourselves to see if anybody does buy it. So the point is that instead of investing hundreds of dollars into a design that's untested, you could first spend 20 or 25 to first find out if it's worth the investment. Testing also helps you work out the kinks of your idea. So going back to this t-shirt analogy, you could try testing in different markets, such as the Tuba City flea market versus selling online versus selling through an existing storefront. You could experiment with color choice for the shirt, or you could explore whether a hoodie is more attractive to customers than a t-shirt design. And then the big one is that while you're testing all these things like color choice, market access, sweatshirt versus t-shirt, all that, you can also use this testing phase to play with pricing. How much are people willing to pay for your product or your service? If your shirt costs you $20 to have made, but your customer is only willing to pay $15 for it, then you're in trouble. I would say that that idea is not validated. When you're testing, you can do all kinds of creative things like name your price to see what people are willing to pay. Or you could charge different prices in different markets to see which markets are the most viable for your business. Yes, all sorts of great reasons to test. But the last one, arguably the most important reason to test first, is to see who is actually buying this product or the service. One of the biggest mistakes that we see entrepreneurs make is that they assume that everyone, anyone and everyone is their customer. Failure or success of your idea usually boils down to whether or not you actually have a deep understanding of who it is that's buying your product or your service. Is it mostly people of a specific gender identity? Is it an age group? Is it people who live or work in a certain location? Is it people who make a certain amount of income? Is it people who don't have enough time to make dinner for a large family? If you can't get specific about who's benefiting from your product or your service, then you'll never really know the true value of your idea. And people pay money for a product or a service because it solves a problem for them, or it fuels some sort of interest that they have. And you have to know what that problem is. You have to know what those interests are. And if you don't know that, then what you actually have is what I call, or what many people call, a solution in search of a problem. And in my mind, that's the quickest way to kill an idea. So that brings me to my second question for this group is raise your little Zoom hand. If you need a orientation on where your Zoom hand is, I have to figure it out myself, actually. Raise your Zoom hand if you've already identified who your customers are. And that could be via research that you've done, or it could be a gut or intuition. Gut or intuition meaning like, if you're a childcare provider, your gut or intuition tells you that you're serving families with kids under the age of 3 or something like that. So I'm looking for Zoom hands, and I'm wondering if this means that the folks in this room don't know who their customers are. If so, then I think we need to do another workshop on that. Actually, there is a workshop on that. I think it was hosted by Trish Rensink at the beginning of the year. All right, Crystal has a good sense of who her customer is. Awesome. For those of you who didn't raise your Zoom hand, I think that's where you need to start. And there, I can point you at the end of this towards a workshop that we did host on that earlier this year. But in my mind, you can't wholly test something if you don't have a sense of who it is that you need to test with. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about this idea of prototyping, or how to test your idea. How do you test a product idea? How do you test a service idea? How can you test a nonprofit idea? I'm going to show you a whole bunch of pictures here, and hopefully you'll start to see some common themes. Okay, this is a prototype. This is a prototype. This actually used to be my whole first life, was these sorts of prototypes. This is a prototype. This is a prototype that I actually made. It's, I can't even remember what it was now. This was so long ago. It was never mind. I'm not going to get it right. Let's just move along. This is a prototype. This is a prototype. This is a prototype. This is something that we did in Tuba City, actually, at the chapter in 2019. This is a prototype. I worked on this in Lima, Peru, with a fantastic group of folks. This is a prototype. I worked on this in Uganda with a fantastic nonprofit over there. And this is a prototype. And I think that's my last picture. Oh no, This is my last picture, I'm pretty sure. So based on what I just showed you, I have a question for you guys. A little bit of a quiz. What would you say a prototype is? How would you guys define it? You can either unmute yourself or just type something in the chat window. And I'm going to leave a few seconds for that. Tim, if you're there, I'd love to know your perspective. What do you think a prototype is?
A prototype would be working on a business that you have some sort of model that you could sort of put together. It doesn't really have to be a physical model, it could be on paper, but something that you're going to be selling eventually. So you can start out with the ones you had, the ones you showed as prototypes, and but that would be a good starting point too.
Yeah, that's exactly it. My definition here is it's this process of quickly putting together a working model in order to illustrate an idea, test aspects of a design, communicate features and benefits, and gather early and critical feedback from a target customer. That's all we're talking about here. So thank you, Tim. That was spot on. And you can learn pretty much anything from a really inexpensive prototype. You can learn preferences for price, how to pay, customer interaction, size, color, layout, look and feel, or whether or not your idea is intuitive to other people. Does it make sense, or is it completely against all mental models that they know? Does it actually solve a problem that they have? These are all great things that you would want to learn from a prototype. So if we're looking at this, if you're wondering what this is a 3D printed ring. And the person who had these printed up might be wanting to learn what their customer is willing to pay for this particular design. They might be wanting to learn what type of person is interested in this design. Is it all female, or is there a kids? Is this their breakthrough into the child market? Is this actually comfortable on somebody's finger, or is it scratchy with all those little holes in it? Does the weight feel good, or does it feel flimsy and like the quality might be low? Similarly, with a prototype like this, you might learn. So let me explain what this is in case, because I was flipping through those pictures really quick. This is just a few Post-it notes with visuals and headlines to explain a process. It's like a meal order and delivery process. So with this process spelled out in this way, you might learn whether or not this process, as you've defined it, is actually convenient for your customer. You might learn whether or not the estimated times that you've laid out here are acceptable to a customer. You might learn whether or not there's a barrier to customer adoption. For example, in this case, you have to download an app in order to give your feedback. But if people come back to you and say, oh, I don't download apps, or I live in a place where downloading apps is really difficult, then you might be setting yourself up for failure if you require them to download an app. You also might learn something like what time of day the service is most desired. If you're looking to streamline and you find out that 95% of people would only use this during lunchtime, then maybe this is a service that you could offer between the hours of like 10 to 1, and then you deprioritize at the other times of the day. In this prototype that we ran in Tuba City back in 2019, we learned all kinds of things. So we were preparing for the co-working space that's going to launch, as Raquel said, at the end of this year. And we really wanted to understand people's preferences when it came to things like workspace. What does their ideal workspace look like? What is their willingness to pay for a dedicated workspace? So those are some of the things that we started to learn in this session. Willingness to pay for office space or desk space in Tuba City, the square footage of a desirable office space, how private do people want spaces to be versus would they compromise privacy for price, like hot desks in a co-working space. We also learned a lot about our customers' values. For example, I pulled a quote here. Somebody made somebody had in this little workspace that they built out of Legos, there was kind of a circular thing in the center. And I asked her, what is that? And she said, oh, that's the desk. It's important to me that the table is a circle so that everyone has an equal voice. That says a lot to me about what she's looking for in a workspace. We can also learn things like what times of day and what days of the week do customers want to access this space. If we're saying we're going to be open Monday through Wednesday from 8 to noon, but we learn from a session like this that most entrepreneurs only work on their business after work on the weekdays or on the weekends, then we have to adjust our model to fit the needs of the customer that we want to attract. And then lastly, with a prototype like this is the one that I worked on in Uganda. We were working on creating a food product for mothers with toddlers who the food product was a food porridge that you could mix with water to feed your baby or to feed your toddler, I guess I should say. So we tested all of these different bag designs with moms, and we learned that those moms didn't want the cylinders because there had been some previous bad experience with rats in their community that involved food cylinders. We also learned that the reusable bag was really desirable for this particular group of women, that they wanted the opportunity to determine their own portion sizes. So the single serve bags that we were really excited about turned out not to fit so well with at least the moms in this particular place where we were, and that there was a huge preference for plastic packaging versus paper, just a higher value on plastic packaging than paper. Whereas if it were me, I probably would have leaned towards paper. But again, this product isn't for me, it's for a mom that I'm designing for. So let's talk about the logistics of how, if you actually can come up with how to make a prototype for your service, for your product, for your nonprofit idea, how do you actually test that? So it's just pretty thoughtful. The first thing you want to do is figure out what is it that you need to learn. And unfortunately, this is easier said than done because sometimes you don't know yet what you need to learn. So you really got to tease out, what assumptions am I making? Like for me, with that paper versus plastic, I would assume that everybody wants paper because it's more environmentally friendly, and I assume that everybody's environmentally friendly, but I was quickly put in my place when the women told me that they wanted plastic. So I made an assumption right off the bat that of course they would want paper. Another way you could think about this is what worries you about your idea. If you create something and it's all red and you're like, I'm not sure about the red, I just don't know. That's a great thing to test. Similarly with the service, like with this workshop series, we're always wondering, is lunchtime the best time? We just don't know. Are Wednesdays the best day? If that worries you, that's something definitely to test. So the next thing I have here is then you got to get creative. You got to build that prototype or your test that will help you learn whatever it is that you want to learn. So if you're worried about the color red, then your test should offer red and a variety of other colors that are viable to you, and let the customer tell you whether or not that red is really a bad idea or if it's all in your head. Similarly, what we could be doing with these workshops is hosting some in the evening, some others during different days, different times of the week, to see if more people end up showing up different times of day. I already have that here. If it's something about pricing, I'm going to go into that a little bit more later because that's a huge one for people. So if you're not sure about pricing, you could assemble a list of questions. I'm actually going to go through some as an example here in a little bit, or a storyboard for your target customer to understand more, like what are they willing to pay? Is this Post-it note as valuable as their Apple mouse? And if you know the Apple mouse is worth $100 and they value it equally, you could say like, okay, well, my Post-it note, I could probably sell it for $100 because they value it just as much as they value their Apple mouse. So the next thing you would want to do is gather a group that actually represents your target customer. Again, the thing that I see here is our first notion is to like go to people who love us, who don't necessarily want to discourage you. Your loved ones, your mothers especially, they want to encourage you. So they will probably only compliment you on your idea or tell you all the wonderful things about it. You need to find that really good friend that's going to be constructive with you, who's going to be willing to tell you like it is. And then more ideally, you'll actually find other people who maybe don't know you very well. I think one of the great places to do this actually is a Tuba City flea market or something like that. There's a whole community of people. Some of them may know you, some of them won't. But whether or not they're willing to stop at your booth or whether or not they're willing to talk to you might be a good indication of who your customer is and whether or not that's the right market. And then the last one is to me, it's more like willingness to hear constructive feedback and avoiding bias if at all possible, or guiding people when you're testing your idea. And we can talk a little bit more about that. But the point of it being that you have to be willing to hear hard truths. That's the only way that your product or service is going to get better, is if you actually hear the constructive stuff that people are willing to share with you. I'm going to pause a little bit to see if there's any questions. I don't see any in the chat window, but I know that some people came into this workshop with, at least some with nonprofit service ideas, and then one person with the product idea, 2 people with the service. I'm just going to do a quick temperature read here. Is this all resonating with you? Are you going to call BS on me? Otherwise, I'm going to keep on going. We're going to talk about pricing in particular, because it is kind of a tricky one.
Okay, I was just going to ask, like, as you're going through these examples, which are really great, if there were some examples of example questions, or what are some ways to ask about some of these details? Like if you're not sure about pricing, assemble interview questions. So what would be an example interview question?
Let's talk about pricing. Thank you, Chris. It's one of the things that most people want to test. So let's talk about it. And if you're not, there's also a whole school of theory on this. So if you Google willingness to pay and willingness to pay questions, willingness to pay studies, you will find a treasure trove of all kinds of different ways that companies, consultants, schools of thought think about this approach of how do you know how to price a product. So I'm putting through a few examples here, because without knowing whether or not someone is actually out there that's willing to pay for your product or service, you really don't know whether or not your business can make enough money to cover the cost to run your business. So for a nonprofit, you can't tell whether or not a program will sustain if you don't have a sense of how many people might be interested in whatever it is that you have to offer. I pulled these comic strips from the web because I feel like they really illustrate the common challenges that I've seen when entrepreneurs test pricing. On the one hand, we make assumptions that if we get good feedback on our idea, then that automatically means people will buy it. And secondly, more often than not, people will tell you what they think you want them to say. They'll tell you what they think you want to hear. So it's on you to get past superficial questions like, how much would you pay for this? And instead focus on creating a product or service that really gels with your customer. People don't buy products or services, they buy the value that they represent. So let's get into Crystal's question. Let's talk specifically about how you might phrase a question. So this is going back to the example that we did in Tuba City. We didn't ask the community of Tuba City that showed up for our event. We didn't ask them, how much are you willing to pay for a co-working space? Instead, we asked them, where do you currently operate your business? Is it, I have to look at my own slide. Is it in the flea market? Is it online? Is it in a rented space? Is it somewhere else? Whatever it may be, like think through where do you do most of your business? And then how much do you spend per month on that space? Like give us a range. Is it $0? Is it $500? Is it $25? And that helps us at Change Labs figure out, okay, there's actually quite a bit of people out there who are paying more than $750 a month for workspace. And there's actually much less people than we thought who are getting away with free workspace. So we can surmise from that. Sorry, I just dropped my pen, so I'm a little distracted. We can surmise from that the majority of people, at least who came to our event, who are interested in Change Labs, are already accustomed to paying some amount, whether it's a nominal amount or a significant amount of the income, but they're already accustomed to paying for workspace. So for us to come in and say like, oh, we're Change Labs and we're going to charge you for a workspace, people might expect that. There's probably a few here, according, just looking at our pie charts, that might be surprised, but for the most part, we're not going to like cause any shock waves just by charging for our service. So another way that you could think about it, again, instead of just saying how much would you be willing to pay for X, you could think about it, again, going back to value. Is X worth more than Y, or is X equal to Y? Is Y greater than X? So think about your product or your service or whatever it is that you're offering. Figure out what other thing is it that your customer does that's either analogous. So in here, I have a house cleaning service versus a gutter cleaning service. You might say, like, if they're willing to pay for a gutter cleaning service, and I know that they pay $100 every month for that, I'm offering something of similar value. So they might be willing to pay the same amount for that, for a similar service. You could use that analogy, you could use that metaphor. Another thing that I've done in the past is if I'm invited into somebody's house, I'll look around to see what sort of things that they have on the wall, what's next to their bedside table, what do they put above the fireplace, or what are some of the items in the house that they clearly must value. Either it's in a prized location or it has a lot of utility because it's in a highly utilized location. And I might ask them, is my Post-it do you think this Post-it is worth the same as that photo over there? Or is it worth the same as this, this little Bluetooth fan that you have? Anything that can get you away from a yes or no, or a possibly biased response like, oh, I know you want me to say $20, so I'm going to say $20, but getting people to actually think about how they value items that they already have, and is your item that you're trying to sell them, or your service that you're trying to sell them, of similar value, of equal value, of greater value. I have one more example here to help get your brains turning. This I actually stole from the internet, but I really liked it, so I thought I'd share it with this group. This is one of those think tank type institutions that publish their willingness to pay methodologies, and I was really gelling with it. And I thought it might appeal to some folks in this group. So they basically have broken it down to 4 questions. At what price would you consider, insert your product here. At what price would you consider this fan too expensive for you to buy? Is it this amount, this amount, this amount? Like, tell me. At what price would you consider this fan to be so low that you kind of question the quality? What's that? At what price would you consider this fan starting to get too expensive so that it's not quite out of the question, but you'd have to think about it before buying? And then at what price would you consider this fan to be a great buy, a good bargain for the money? And you can, by seeing where people rank their responses on these levers, you can start to carve out a space that you think might work for you. So you might want to be a little bit more expensive than a great buy, but you want to be a little less expensive than somebody having to think about it too much that they might not buy it. And you definitely wouldn't want to exceed past the too expensive, and you don't want to be perceived as low quality or this is too cheap. And of course, everybody's going to give you a very different response. So it'll also behoove you. We mentioned earlier on when we're talking about how to test that you don't ever want to do this with just one person. You need like a group of people. And ideally, it's a group of people that actually represent the customer that you want to sell to or you think would actually buy your product or service. So keep that in mind, is that if you did do a cool test like this, that you'd have to look at the analysis across a big group of people. And you'll have to anticipate that some people are the answers may widely diverge. So a lot of it is going to have to come down to, okay, I think this price point, now I'm going to go test that now that somebody's gone through and answered these questions. And of course, you always have to make sure, I mean, different philosophies of thought on this, but my intuition is that you definitely want to make sure that if this fan is costing you $30 to make, that depending on whatever you want your product margin to be, what you're going to take home in your pocket, probably should be more than $30. You've got to factor in your time and costs for marketing. You've got to factor in your time and costs that you put into creating this product, salaries that you need to pay, photography of this product that you need to get done, your website, your annual website costs, all those other things too. So let me go back. Crystal, did that answer your question, or we can talk through a little bit more too, but I first want to see if that was helpful.
That was great. I also like this. I also like these questions too. Thank you.
Yeah, I do too. So all of this, as Raquel mentioned, is being recorded on YouTube. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. So don't feel like you have to write down these questions quickly. They'll all be up online. And of course, I'm sure Raquel can send around the slides to anybody who wants them. Let me show you what it looks like if you go through this effort to build prototypes, to test them, to do the analysis on what people say. I don't know how many of you out there are looking for loans or grants or investment in your ideas. Most of the time, implementing an idea does cost money, and most of the time, the person that you're asking for money, whether it be a banker, an investor, a nonprofit like Change Labs, a family member, usually they want some sort of assurance that you've done at least some research to validate everything that you're telling them. So this is the part that I love, is taking all of that user research, all those prototype tests, and being able to synthesize it into something like, here, investor, stakeholder, mom, cousin, my customer is local families with small children, and that represents 45% of the Tuba City population. So I have about 810 possible recurring customers. I went out and I tested with folks, and 75% of those folks indicated that they would be willing to pay $26 for my widget over here. It cost me $10.24 to make this. That means I'm making about $16 of profit on each of these sales that I can continue to reinvest into my nonprofit or reinvest into my business, whatever it may be. But this is the sort of data, this is the sort of analysis that you can get to by doing this testing, this prototyping, this validation. And this is the sort of stuff that business loan officers want to see, investors want to see. I'd hope that family members would want to see this too, but it really helps think through your business, think through why it is that you're doing this and what's possible. Any questions before we move on to some of the free resources that I was able to come up with? Well, we're basically almost done. This has gone faster than I thought. So I want to emphasize that prototyping, the whole concept of prototyping is low fidelity, inexpensive, really fast, multiple ideas. So testing and validating need not be some big expensive thing that you have to do. You don't have to hire outside consultants to do it. You don't even need specialists, really. Here's some things that are available that I think are fantastic places to test ideas. So first and foremost, Change Labs is we're still getting our new workspace open. But for those of you who've driven by our land in Tuba City, you've probably seen this little pop-up trailer, which is the gray thing in the upper left-hand corner of the slide. That trailer, we call it the pop-up trailer, and it's there. The whole reason it exists is to help entrepreneurs in the community test their ideas. So anytime you want to have a pop-up shop to see like who all would buy this shirt, or what designs are gelling most with people, or who would come and order a dress from me, or whatever it may be, you can always use the Change Labs pop-up trailer to test out those ideas. I've mentioned several times in this talk already that I think the flea market is a wonderful place to test an idea. For 10 to, actually, I know they charge 10 in Tuba. I'm not sure what they charge in other communities, but $10 to $20, you can get 8 hours of exposure of your idea in a community to see, like, are people buying it? Are people interested? Are people asking questions? What questions are they asking? And so on and so on. So the flea market is a fantastic incubator of ideas, a place to test and play. Social media, Facebook polls, Instagram polls. I mean, talk about broad exposure, especially for those of you who already have cultivated a big following on Facebook, or not Facebook, but any social media platform. It's a great place to like get feedback from those people who are rooting for you, who want to see you succeed. They're a great place to get that input. SpongeBob and Patrick, that was just communicate that a trusting friend who's willing to provide you with constructive feedback is also a free resource to you. And then again, another plug for Change Labs. We have all kinds of tools for prototyping. My favorite one happens to be the Cricut machine. So in here, we use it all the time for prototyping new Change Labs merch. So I have in here like the Cricut machine plus the heat press plus the transfer film, a t-shirt, and the laptop is all that we need to test a new Change Labs t-shirt design. And then similarly at the top of the screen, again, the Cricut machine, the heat press, some vinyl film, and a bag from Michael's in Flagstaff is all that we need to try out different bag designs for Change Labs, and what's most exciting to members of our community, what ones gel the most with our staff, and so on and so on. Ooh, I wish I brought some water. I'm getting parched. That was all I had, guys. Does anybody else have any questions or have any specific services or specific products in mind that everyone else in this group can think through how they might test it? Anything that you're stuck on that you're thinking, I don't know how I'd prototype that? Well, I have my email here if anybody does get stuck and just need somebody else to chat with about, how might I test this service, or how might I test this product? I'd be happy to chat. And then otherwise, I'm going to hand things back over to Raquel. But thank you all. It was nice to chat with some of you, and hope to see you guys in a future workshop.
Thank you so much. I also would like to thank Heather for being here and sharing all of that knowledge with us. For our audience members, thank you again for being here today, and thank you for your questions and participation. If you missed any part of Heather's presentation, Change Labs will have this session posted to our YouTube channel later this week. And then if you missed any part of my portion of today's session earlier, and are interested in the services that Change Labs provide and want any information, feel free to visit our website at nativestartup.org, or you may email me. My name is Raquel Black again, and my email is raquel@nativestartup.org as well. We will have our next workshop posted up soon. It will be in October, and you can go ahead and register for that one very soon. I believe we'll have it, we'll announce it on our social media platforms as soon as that's ready to go. So if there's no further questions, I'd like to thank you again, again, for your time, and wish everyone a great day. And I hope you all have a great rest of your week as well.